Hey everyone, so today I have a quick book review for you all on this, Linden Falls by Joshua Hershey. Now, this is a Christian fantasy novel with quite a few biblical themes. The main theme being the feelings you get when you feel like God has forsaken you and the hopelessness that comes along with that. Now, I don't normally read Christian fantasy novels. In fact, the only other Christian fantasy novel I can think that I've read is The Chronicles of Narnia, which I read probably 20 plus years ago, so this is definitely a step outside what I normally read. Now, that being said, I do think it's always a good idea to broaden your horizons at least a little bit. I mean, it is still fantasy, so I guess it's not that big of a step for me, but you know, a little step is a little step, right? Now, this is going to be a pretty quick review of this book. But first things first, let me just say that there were some aspects of this book that I did enjoy. Unfortunately, there were also quite a few aspects that I did not enjoy that really hampered my overall enjoyment of this book. Overall, I would say this book is alright, and I probably would recommend it to readers that are into this style of writing. But I definitely wouldn't recommend it to readers that don't normally read Christian fantasy or readers that aren't into super fast-paced books, but I'll get into those details in a second. So if you're looking for a great book or even a good book, I don't necessarily think this is the book you are looking for, unfortunately. First of all, let's talk about the overall story, and don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything. This is a spoiler-free review. This book follows Maybelle, the main character, who's rumored to be a witch in her hometown, and her hometown is shrouded in darkness under Lavian, which is a demon. When she finds a book that transports her to the unseen world, the seen world being her normal world, she finds herself in a world of demons and angels. Wanting to set her kingdom free and end the darkness, she sets out on a quest to defeat Lavian. And on her quest, she meets many allies and develops bonds with other characters that help her achieve her quest. Now, that's a very high overview of this book without getting into any spoilers, but what I will say, and what I already said at the beginning, is that I thought this book was mediocre to borderline good. So, let's get into the specifics on why I feel that way. First, let's talk about the story. Now, overall, I actually thought the story was pretty good, and maybe that is due to the fact that I don't normally read this genre of fantasy. I found the story to be actually pretty interesting, and the moral dilemmas that the characters face is something that any reader can actually relate to. And although the story isn't something the reader can relate to directly, I mean, how often do you actually face your demons head-on like this? But let's say the biblical themes are definitely something that anyone can relate to, even if you're not a religious person. So yeah, I actually found the story to be pretty interesting, and since this genre is outside what I normally read, it is definitely a fresh kind of read for me personally, which is nice. Now, the part of any book that is equally important as the story is of course the characters. And unfortunately, unlike the story, what I actually enjoyed, the characters really didn't engage me really in the slightest. The closest character you can probably get engaged to is probably the main character. Unfortunately, you really can't get too engaged in her or her struggles. And the reason for this, I think, is pretty simple. It's because of the pacing of this book. The pacing right from the get-go is really, really jarring, in my opinion. The book opens up with the main character already in the middle of this certain action, and again, I don't want to talk about the specifics because avoiding spoilers, but it opens up right in the middle of where she's already trying to accomplish something. And it's really hard as the reader to get your bearings. And unfortunately, or at least I think this is unfortunate, maybe you're into this kind of thing, the story really doesn't slow down even after this. It's one big action set piece after another, and as the reader, it's really hard to get your footing and really catch up with what's going on in this world. And unfortunately, that's why I wasn't really able to get engaged with a lot or pretty much all of the characters in this story. I felt like the whole time I was reading, I was just trying to keep my head above water as I was inundated with more details and more action set pieces, and you really don't get a chance to breathe in this book. Now again, if you're into super fast-paced books, man, I mean, this is probably the fastest fast-paced book I've ever read. And then this also means that the feelings this book is trying to make you feel doesn't really work at all. Or I mean, at least it didn't work for me at all. Because you're not invested in the characters at all, or even the world. And I'll talk about the world in 1 second. So the emotional impact you will get from this story is greatly diminished had the author slowed down just a little bit, at least in sections. Maybe the author was a little nervous that readers would get bored, so he kept the pacing really fast. However, this did impact my enjoyment of the story quite a bit, so it actually kind of did the opposite of what I think the author was going for. Of course, on the flip side, like I already mentioned, if you're into fast-paced books, this is definitely a fast-paced book for you. Now, the setting and the world building has the same issues that the characters do because of the pacing. As the author keeps the pacing of the book so fast, you really don't get to learn that much about the world or what's going on in it. Or in that case, even the other characters inhabiting this world. So again, it makes it kind of hard to care about what's going on in the story when you don't really get to know the details on the world and why the world is like this. Unfortunate. On a more positive note, I will say that the prose used throughout this is actually pretty effective. It's good in explaining, or at least explaining the small details that are available, and it's very good in setting the action set pieces if you can keep up with everything that's going on so quickly. For example, let's check out this one excerpt from the book. The last of the beast-like men had barely finished drinking when the Titans convulsed and began writhing on their sides, vomiting between spasms. Their skin split and their bodies expanded, each growing a head taller than before. Scales appeared beneath the gashes in their flesh. So yeah, pretty detailed, not to mention grotesque, right? And I gotta say, this book is very good when it comes to that aspect. And unfortunately, there's just not enough of those details to keep you engaged throughout because the author just seemed to want to focus on the action set pieces more. Overall though, I thought the prose was pretty good, at least for the little details that are in this book. And that is my review of Linden Falls by Joshua Hershey. And like I said at the beginning, it did have some good aspects to it. Unfortunately, the negative aspects did hamper my overall enjoyment of this book. If you are looking for something that's fast-paced with a lot of action set pieces though, again, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what you get in this story. And of course, if you don't care about character development or world building, then again, yeah, you might like this book. Also, if you are a fan of biblical themes in your books, then yeah, there are definitely some biblical themes in this. But outside of that, I don't think many readers would like this book, unfortunately. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, let me know down below, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.